Today we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday, and we've been in this chapter about the immune system, and yesterday we got to talking about that first and second line of defense. And that first line of defense is just simply that that mechanical barrier, the skin or the mucous membranes. And then in the second line of defense, no matter how many times that second line of defense has to be used, that second line of defense is going to function in the same way. So it doesn't matter if you've been exposed to the same thing again, that second line of defense has characteristics that keep it the same no matter what. If a pathogen begins to make it past that second line of defense, we now have to incorporate, and we got a little bit into the information yesterday about that third line of defense. The third line of defense is the one that we're going to call the immunity. Now, we talked about how we can have a cellular immune response or a humoral. In just quick review, what are the humors? Not the ha-has. Our body fluids, all right? So when we were talking, we mentioned that with this particular immunity, this third line of defense, with this third line of defense, we're moving into this good old stuff with antibodies, right? Now, your textbook is going to get into great detail about the structure of an antibody, okay? We just don't have that much time. When we look at an antibody, you're going to read in your textbook information about what's going to be termed the heavy chain, the light chain, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, we don't have that kind of time. But the way that the body's going to produce this, don't forget, we've got the little proteins, all right? Now, antibodies are going to be formed because there's been some type of antigen. Do you remember that? Okay, so there has been something, some type of antigen that has caused a problem, and the body needs to take care of it. So if these are my antigens and an antibody had to be produced, what antibody, because remember, this is now specific. When we are in this third line of defense, we have now gotten very specific. This reaction that's going to take place, we're having it take place against a particular antigen only, okay? So at this point, we have produced an antibody for which antigen?
Circle.
Our circle. Okay, does that make sense? So, these antigens that are going to create a little bit of an issue, okay? Antigens. Antigens could be a protein, a polysaccharide. What does that make you think about? Sugar. It could be a glycoprotein. What does that make you think about? sugar with the protein chain. What about the glycolipid?
Sugar and fat.
And the lipid would be, where would that be coming from? The membrane, because we have those little phospholipids, and it would have the sugar train. I think we're all tired. Sugar chain, okay, coming off of that phospholipid. So, the most effective antigens are going to be the ones that can be large and complex. Something smaller, okay, is not going to elicit as this type of response. Chances are something smaller can be taken care of by that first and second line of defense, okay? When we have these antigens, when we can have an antigen and the body can take care of it, but that antigen just really wants to be a problem, okay, that antigen can't do it by itself, all right? So that antigen is going to be this little small molecule, and what it'll do is it'll combine with a larger molecule, and when it combines with a larger molecule, it's going to be termed a hapten. It just happened to form, okay? Now what is it going to do? When it takes those little smaller pieces and gets them to come together as a larger molecule, well, this stimulates the immune system. So, when we have a problem arise, something has now become large enough to affect the immune system. So what we're going to see, if we stimulate the immune system, we are now going to stimulate lymphocytes to react. Now, really quickly, we can stimulate those lymphocytes to react to the hapten, which would be that little molecule stuck to something larger, or we can stimulate that immune system to react to the large molecule, okay? And when we begin to stimulate those lymphocytes, what are our lymphocytes? Our T cells, B cells. T cells had to go to the thymus, they had to mature. Most likely they're now sitting where? In my lymph nodes. B cells.
Bone marrow.
Bone marrow, and specifically are going to be found in oil. Let's go right now with the bone marrow. I'm not going to get too detailed. All right, so is everybody with me at this point for my lymphocytes? T cells and B cells. Because at this point, we're going to get specific. There's lots of processes that are going to occur for specificity. So now, these lymphocytes that we're going to need, the T cells and the B cells, don't forget, both of them originate in the bone marrow. The T cells will just simply be immature cells that will make their way to the thymus gland, get exposed to the hormone, they will begin to mature. So the T cell matures, and by blood transport, make their way to a lymph node. Due to the structure of the lymph node, they can sit and wait. Everybody with me so far? Now, in the bone marrow, we're going to find our B cells. Now, when we look at the B cells, we're going to see that we're going to give rise from the bone marrow. Once again, transport in the blood. B cells can make their way to the lymph node, and they can sit and wait. So both T and B, they're going to make their way to lymph organs. Think about the spleen, think about the lymph nodes. Both are functioning in this immune system. Now, when we begin to look at the T cells and the B cells, as we have them sitting here in this lymph node, they are going to act with their ability for immune responses. And in a system, okay, in a normal system, due to these lymphatic vessels, these lymph nodes that we're going to have, you're going to probably have millions of these that are waiting to begin their actions. Now, when we begin to have the cell react, we're going to need that T cell and B cell to make clones of themselves. Okay? Because they're going to have to be specific. So if I activate, let's say I activate this T cell in this particular lymph node, I don't need all of my T cells that are sitting and waiting to be activated against that one invader. I need that one T cell to mount the attack against that invader and begin to clone itself. Does that make sense? Because these cells, these lymphocytes, they're going to be able to make those memory cells. So if I'm invaded by a pathogen and I have 1 million T cells throughout my body, I don't need those 1 million going after this one invasion. I need some T cells to get activated against the invasion and then clone.
So once activated, they're cloned instead of coming from bone marrow?
Right. So the T cell that gets activated for that invasion, rather than taking all the ones that have been made and gone to the thymus gland and everything else, rather than getting all of them, that one that reacted will begin to clone, and it'll begin to clone with the specificity against that one invader.
And it'll stay in that one node?
Okay, so I'm not explaining this right. Okay, okay, I probably need to check my recording. All right, don't have anything that's really good representation